and broadcast.
It's like a booster for that specific area.
Exactly.
Can you please tell, I agree with the data that you have on this.
I'm sorry?
Can you please provide me with the data
I
that you
should,
have
yes.
on it?
Yes,
I would
ma'am.
like to see that as well.
All right.
Do you have a question?
Well, we're going to get back to everybody on each of these, but let's make it through the off-street parking and loading. Dan, I know you've helped us with that a lot on all development, starting in all the later phases of Georgetown Estates. And we've been doing that ever since. So what do you see in our ordinance to help you?
Right now, we have nothing in the ordinance. Within the ordinance, if you're in a townhouse development, the requirement is 2 spaces. If it's a 2-bedroom unit, which most of them are, it's 2 spaces per unit, which typically there's double-car garages and they claim spaces within the garage. The issue with townhouse developments is that you need some other off-street parking to deal with situations for visitors, parties, and those types of things. So I think we've gotten much better with that, but it's been through the PRD process. We've actually required that to happen in a couple of developments.
Because we were able to
Correct.
negotiate.
So, like for instance, I did a calculation on Maple Ridge. Instead of having 2 spaces per unit, they have, and that's a total townhouse development. There's no single families in there at all. They have 2.66 spaces per unit. And that seems to be a little bit on the high side. There's actually some of the spaces they claim are never used over there.
Wait, 2.6, they're saying that's high?
Yeah.
What do you do, borrow from your neighbor and just go up to park?
They have, no, 2.6 because they have them clustered. There's 150 units there. So that means there's 100 extra parking spaces beyond the ordinance requirements, 100.
And where are they scattered?
They're spaced around in different locations with small satellite lots.
Well, what we've run into, the biggest problem we had originally, at least when I got on the board 3 or 4 years ago, was in Georgetown Estates. Families were coming in, they had a 2-car garage, but they had 3 kids, and there was 5 vehicles out there, and they had no place to park them but on the street. And I don't know what's happening in the...
Well, generally now you get a townhouse has a double car garage and then has a driveway that can accommodate 2 cars. To essentially get really 4 spaces if there's enough distance between the driveway and the back of the sidewalk to make sure that that's there.
And they now get a $25 fine.
Well, I think it's a different type of product that's being built now than was in Georgetown
I'm
Estates.
talking about Georgetown Estate.
Okay. Well,
Does that cut down on the traffic, I'm sorry, on the parking?
Well, I don't think we've had complaints out in Maple Ridge, right? I think that's probably the best development we've had for negotiating additional parking. Dan, do you agree with that?
I agree with you, Tom. And let's see. I was just trying to do a look, because we have the same situation at Oak Brook. I'm sorry, the Overlook. There are some type of, as we have 139 extra parking stalls for 119 townhouses. So, 139, I'm just trying to get that ratio. So that's like 0.85. So that's like 2.85 versus 2.66. So it's somewhere in that range. Yeah, it's not quite 3, but
And this new development we just saw here, the PRD, just quick look, did you spot places where they could
yeah,
locate them?
they did, but it's not as much as we've told them they have to find more. That was part of the comment.
Well, again, I think the point is on a PRD, we can negotiate that where if in the R2 developments, which that's what our township seems like, it's 4 R2 or PRD developments, we've got to put something in there at the end to cover that.
I'd say, like, if you go between the 2.66 and the 2.85, somewhere around 2.75, I'll do some double checking and come back to you with some examples if we can find them anywhere else.
But give us a couple sentences too that we could publicize.
Sure.
It might be in the
Yeah.
the ordinance. All right. And loading requirements, I think you touched on it
Yeah,
last
Bruce
time.
and I have both discussed that there's not the need for the loading requirements. We'll come up with some wording on that it's only for facilities that would have those needs based upon square footage, like an industrial facility or a manufacturing facility. Like Universal Electric has them, but we don't necessarily need them in office buildings at South Point, and the ordinance doesn't discern between the difference between the two types of buildings.
Can you finish with that two
Sure.
sentences on it? All right. Then the last thing we wanted to discuss, and I can't even remember where we're at, it's been so long, on the fire ordinance. I think the last thing we heard, that Chris' opinion was that we can't discriminate between commercial and residential false alarms. Pardon me?
I think we had some executive discussions regarding certain things, but, I think based on information available, and Bruce and I are working on this, we found a few pretty much on-point sample ordinances that we can amend our existing one to, I think, address the township's concerns and desires with respect to the higher cost associated to returning to a commercial facility as opposed to a residential facility.
Just recently, our fire departments had several issues that were really costly to them.
I have a
And
question.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say, part of the things we look into are, establishing a service charge, which would generally offset the cost of going, and also, in certain circumstances, an actual fine. So there would be two avenues to collect.
I have a question. I see that two of our firemen are here. Do you remember what my question was now? Whenever there's a commercial fire alarm, I understood that all three fire departments go. Is that true?
It depends on the location of the alarm. If it's in the like South Point area, it's generally company number 2 and company number 3. If it's in the new apartment complex off Klinger Road, it would be all 3 fire companies. If it's a residence, it depends on which zone it's in, and the fire department determines which response. If all 3 are going, if there's some from neighboring communities coming to assist, or whatever.
We're way overdue for our fire meeting. Is this something we can discuss in a lot more detail at our hopefully soon to come up fire meeting?
Yeah, I can, sure.
Can that be like our main topic of discussion, because this is something we need to get?
Sure. Yeah, the alarm ordinance has been tossed about for a long while here, so.
Yeah.
We're more than happy to discuss.
Can we send that
Let's
meeting
send it to
down?
you right now for the coming month.
Coming month.
That would be
Well,
March.
within the next month. How about the 4th Monday in, Mondays are no good for.
Monday's not a good night for our department, but the 4th Monday especially, that's our business.
What about a Wednesday? What about Wednesday, March 23rd?
You want 3 days, good. Sounds like a good one.
Okay, why don't we set it, and then if for some reason it can't, you have Ring.
I can't commit to it until I check my appointments.
That's fine. So we'll say 10 March. Here, 7 o'clock.
This time, anybody, you heard what we talked about on the subdivision and land development, kind of cleanup things, the street design, fire hydrant distances. If anybody, any residents have any comments or questions about any of those items that you can remember that we talked about, we will continue this hearing, and we'll have actually a list of all these things and the actual wording of how the ordinance would appear. We don't have that now, but this is our first blush at addressing it. Does anybody have any comments on some of the things you heard tonight that you need us to consider in these particular proposed amendments.
The only question I had is, when we said animals, are we specifically just allowing for the raising of chickens, or are we going to expand that to
I would suggest that we consider the three.
what, goats, chickens?
I'd rather take baby steps first with the move.
But I mean, I can't, I don't know, because I wasn't part of the hearing, but 9 acres and not allowing walnuts seems crazy.
I know, it's horrible. It's really
Huh?
Keep them on forms.
I don't know, I like animals.
Anybody else? Go ahead.
Call me on them mailboxes that we're talking about. Over developed on me enough. They actually have them on the sidewalk, but our roads are so wide, you can pull over and get out. I mean, mine's probably 2 or 3 units up for me. Yeah, it's cool, but it's not a big thing. I mean, I walk and get it now, I'm used to it. But the sidewalks are maintained by the homeowner association that I pay into. And they just have, the, in the area where the mailbox are, they just have a big concrete pad. But the sidewalk's still in front of it, so if someone's walking up and you're getting your mail, you don't bother them. But then I also have like the rubber pad for the anti-skid, like for like wheelchair people and handicap crosswalk. They got that there. So basically it's not a big deal. I mean, ours isn't out of the way. It's right where you want.
Is it wide? Is the road wide in there so somebody
I'll
can
tell you
pull
what,
up?
I'll tell you what, with one of our big trucks that we have here with the 10-foot wide pile, like, you have to make 4 passes.
Oh, wow.
The whole way or just right near that area by the box?
No, our whole road is that way. Now, that's the main road, okay, Crest Street, and then the 2 that come up. Now, the ones that go in and around to pick up some of the other places that are off of Crest, they're done by a private contractor. But Collier Township does our road and the 2 main roads coming up into it. But I mean, it's not a big deal. I mean, there's a lot of mailboxes in there. There really is.
Oh, yeah.
There really is. I mean, you just gotta watch the wind up there. I mean, you take the mail off. But what they do is they have the little boxes for your mail, and then they have the big ones in the bottom, just in case you got something coming through the mail that's too big to fit. They'll put it in there and they take the key and they put it up in yours. So you know when that key's in there, you can unlock.
Well, that's not a question on how it works, but our roads are 22-foot wide, period. Unless they pull off areas, they construct the street.
Yeah, I mean, really, it's not that bad. You just put like a teardrop in there, that's all. I
You
mean,
have to do
sidewalk.
something so that you're not blocking or flow of traffic every time you stop to get your mail.
Yeah, I mean, when we pull over, I go up to the cul-de-sac, turn, come back down, my driver's door is on the side with the mailbox. There's still 2 cars can get around it, no problem.
But our roads aren't that
No,
wide.
that's the problem, you know, and, you know, the wide area that you have over Wingle Ridge, I plow that, that's a beautiful area over there. I mean, you never have cars on the street, never. And then you have mailboxes you knock down. You know, and then the problem with the mailboxes, when the wind blows, the lids fall down and your can will bring the plows in. But I mean, they definitely over there need some kind of centralized mailbox. You know?
Well, it's going to be, obviously, it's going to be.
Can't do it now.
So
Yeah.
how does it
But it's a future to start from now on. That's a good thing.
All
But
right.
that's all the info I want.
Good. One more. You had a comment?
Yeah, I want to come up here so you can hear me.
Oh, good. We'll never argue with that. Hurry it up, please.
Well, you're gonna hear me.
I was telling Elizabeth to move her ass, too.
Okay, last time I was down there, you laughed at me. I brought down about the chickens next door. I just want to ask one question, and then I'm going to go on for what I want to say. Is this how you do things? You have an ordinance, and then you don't do anything about it? You got a sign down there that says number 1 place to raise a family. That teaches your family really good values. When you make an ordinance and you have a law and you don't enforce it.
What do you say that isn't
Well,
enforced?
it's chicken over there, and there's an ordinance that they're not allowed to have them.